Very good evening to everyone. Welcome. It's very good to convene everyone once again, and a warm welcome to everyone to the very first GIPA event of this year. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jason Riadi. I am an economic diplomat at GIPA, and I will be your MC for tonight. Now, the topic for tonight's conversation rests around sustainability and health. These are topics that I feel would be relevant in every single era, I feel. And for the most part, we wouldn't be here without them. But without further ado, I think I'd like to open up the session by calling upon my colleague, Hilmi, as Head of Strategic Initiatives and Head of Indonesia at GIPA, to open our session tonight. Everyone, please give him a round of applause.
So very good evening to everyone here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang terhormat tentu Bapak Anindya Bakrie, Ketua Dewan Pertimbangan Kadin, CEO Bakrie Group, dan CDM Indonesia untuk Paris Olympics 2024. Yang saya hormati, a lot of distinguished guests here tonight, Pak Hamdan Hamedan, expert staff to the Minister of Youth and Sports, Bapak Ferro, Executive Director of Pijar Foundation, of course as well, distinguished colleagues from Bakrie Group. Thank you so much for joining us, and our chairman, Bapak Steven Marcelino, all the way from London. Welcome, Pak Steven. So my name is Hilmi, and I represent GIPA in Indonesia. GIPA, for those of you just joining us tonight, we are a one-of-a-kind association representing working white-collar Indonesian professionals across G20 and ASEAN countries. Our mission is simple, two missions. We want to support Indonesia's economic diplomacy. We also want to support Indonesia's human capital development. The event you're attending here tonight is what we call the Global Connect Series, where we gather our community, our ecosystem. I see a lot of very familiar faces here from youth organizations, from corporates, from other think tanks and associations that all make the work we do possible. We aim to talk about current issues, strategic issues, and tonight we'll be discussing a very important topic around sustainability, around ESG, but also around building a healthier Indonesia for Indonesia Emas 2045. Tonight's agenda will start with a keynote speech from Bapak Anindya Bakrie, followed by a fireside chat hosted by our chairman, Mr. Steven Marcelino. We'll then do a group photo together, recognizing Pak Anin's limited time. We'll then move on to the main panel discussion with Pak Ferro and Pak Hamdan, moderated by my colleague from GIPA, but Kemenko Econ as well, Mbak Diva. And then we'll move on to networking with the rest of the guests tonight. So once again, I welcome all of you here tonight. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we're looking forward to a pleasant and eventful evening. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. I'll hand it back to Jason.
Thank you, Hilmi. Now, without further ado, let us present our first esteemed speaker, Pak Anindya Bakrie, on stage as CDM to Paris Olympics for Indonesia, as well as CEO of Bakrie & Brothers. Pak Anin, the floor is yours here. Thank you, Pak Anin. Very glad to have you here. Thank you for making the time. I'd also now like to invite the chairman of GIPA, Steven Marcelino, to take the stage as moderator of this session. Everyone, please give Steven a round of applause.
Test. Good evening, everyone. Pak Anin, it's great to have you back to GIPA. This is actually not your first time speaking at a GIPA event. You addressed us back in London during your visit, where you spoke to a number of overseas hub leaders and a number of engagement. But Pak Anin, this is the first time because GIPA's Indonesia hub is relatively new. So allow us to open first to welcome everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces for those who just returned from working abroad across the UK, Europe, US, and those who just returned, those have returned back to Indonesia a number of years, and GIPA colleagues, friends, and partners attending in today's event. Now, GIPA's Indonesia Hub is started because we want to connect, consolidate, as well as to collaborate. We want to connect those like-minded Indonesians who have come back home so that you feel at home, right? You have a ecosystem support and know sometimes we experience a reverse culture shock when we come back home to Indonesia. Secondly, to also collaborate. We have been the go-to sort of gateway for a lot of overseas professional hub to collaborate with Indonesia KL from ministries and agencies. We're delighted to be shaping an exciting initiative with Ministry of Youth and Sports, with MOFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that in a later panel we can explore. And then also to consolidate, we want to connect back some of the Indonesians who have returned home to overseas professional hubs all across Europe. We have, I think there are a number of six overseas professional hubs all across Europe, in North America, as well as those in Asia Pacific. And hoping to get some questions from overseas professional hubs later who might be tuning overseas, but we'll focus in the room here. So we're delighted because we're the first diaspora organization that have our newly appointed Indonesian CDM, Chief de Mission, to Paris Olympics. And what we thought would be good, to really ask and drill questions to Pak Anin on his role as CDM and his story in pivoting the Bakrie Group towards sustainability, and lastly, deep dive a little bit on his personal story. I think this year is marking your 50th, for example, I think in November, and over this, almost half a century, we want to ask all the right questions because you were, similar with us, graduating and working in New York, working in Wall Street, and now you're coming back and leading some of the most exciting organization as chair of supervisory board at Kadin, leading one of an exciting journey of decarbonization in a family business conglomerate, and also now representing Indonesia in the global stage later on in Paris Olympics 2024. So let's start, Pak Anin, if you to say a few words first before we begin a question. So we'll start about 20 minutes and then we'll open up to anyone that would like to ask questions to Pak Anin directly.
First of all, thank you, Stephen and Jason, right? The one that introduced me. Where's Jason? Where's Jason? Where are you? Yeah. And then welcome everybody. There's Mas Hamdan, Mas Ferro, Mas Hilmi, and many others that I know, and I cannot name you one by one. This is a story from 50-year-old man, huh? Is that what it is? Half a century-year-old wisdom. Anyhow, look, this session is really for you. This is my 10th engagement for the day. I still have one more after this. And I want to make sure that I come here because, one day in the past, I was sitting in your shoes. This type of events mean a lot to just expand the horizon, getting inspired, and hopefully bringing some new ideas and creativities as to what you want to do more. I know you have done a lot. You're a professional association. But yeah, let me share a few things that hopefully will help. Yeah. So I guess number one, let's talk about the hot topic, Chef de Mission. This is something that I didn't know what it was really until recently. And one of the reasons why I agreed to take on this responsibility, especially I was just appointed about a month ago, and this is an election year, which means a month ago you didn't know whether 3 months in a year or 6 months in a year you're going to be busy with this so-called Democratic Party. And if you're running businesses, that means you have only half of the year to make it to this full year, right? So what I see coming out of World Economic Forum this year, there are 3 trends. Number one, I think the world is very much fractured, disjointed, between the East and the West are not at its best. The West itself is having a lot of political turmoil. Leadership and trust is an issue. Then half of the world is also voting this year, including us, right? So that's number one. Number two, I saw these climate initiatives becoming more and more important. 2023 and maybe 2024 was the hottest ever year in the history of humankind. That's pretty serious, right? So when we are talking big about decarbonization and then downstreaming, electrification, let's put that in the back of our mind that this is pretty real. This is as real as it gets, right? And number three, this AI revolution is only the tip of the iceberg and is probably the biggest innovation we would have seen so far, and we will see probably in our lifetime. Yeah. So those are the background of this year, right? Not a simple background, right? So where does this Chef the Mission Olympics 2024 come into play? Well, it is going to be held July end until mid-August. So for Indonesians, this is certainly, even there was going to be 2 rounds, it is certainly after the election, right? So probably it is a good time to bring everybody back together, right? Now, bear in mind, we are an old group, an 82-year-old group. We have been around the block a few times, going up and down the cycles. And, you know, every election, at the end, people have to come together and you know, build the nation again together going forward, right? So it's a good time to do that. Plus, this is also the first Olympics after COVID, right? Back in 2020 in Japan, it was still under COVID protocol. So the whole world will come together and celebrate. Right? And number three, this is the first time in Olympic, believe it or not, there are 4 new sports that are going to be competed. Number one, this is surfing. Nice, right? Coming from Indonesia, that's pretty good. Number 2, skateboard. Right? We have some, but maybe the American fellows will do a lot more. Number 3, breakdance, believe it or not. It's an Olympic sport. You can win medals if you do a lot of it. Back in the 80s, I used to do breakdance, but I stopped because I didn't know it's going to be competed in 2024. And the fourth one, which is the most interesting thing, is speed climbing, right? And in the last 5 years, we have been hearing how Indonesians have Spider-Man, Spider-Woman. So hopefully we can get a few medals from here, right? And of course, we're still hoping from the same badminton that is right now working really hard to always get a medal since 1992, right? And right now, you know, we're not yet there, but we'll be there in badminton and weightlifting, 55 kilos or something. And of course, many other things, archery, and then surfing, then also rowing, and indeed my own sports, aquatics, and also you know, this athletics, gymnastics, all those mother of sports are also competing. And it is actually more exciting than I thought it was as I'm digging deeper. So today, for example, and tell me if I speak too much and you want me to focus on something else. I had a good chat with the chairwoman of Gymnastic Federation. So I asked her, you know, how can I help you, right? Because I cannot teach your athletes how to do gymnastic better than what they have done already. So, okay, Pa, number one, you know, we want to know when she can arrive and when she should come back to the country. I mean, why does that matter, right? Because now it should be when you compete -2 and then +1, right? And maybe that's the right thing to do, but it's just interesting. You know, you are here in Indonesia, you want to compete in Paris, right? Halfway around the world, and you have 2 days to just relax, acclimatize and all that, right? I'm not saying anything, maybe that's still the policy already imposed by the government, maybe because of budget, because of this. But yeah, that's interesting, I think, right? As an entrepreneur, is ripe for a little innovation over there, right? And number two, we need masseuse, Pak. What do you mean we need masseuse? Yeah, Pak, we're there for 4 days. We need a dedicated masseuse. So I said, okay, I'll take note of that. Well, if you're from Indonesia, you have a lot of masseuse, right? You have a lot of Balinese that probably want to do more work. Of course, it has to be certified, physiotherapist, and so on. But it's interesting what kind of requests they ask, right? Then, okay, I note that, and I'll come back to you. Let me think about it, what I can do. Then she asked me, Anin, what are you gonna do differently? Well, I don't know, man. I just hope that I can help everybody to win a little bit more medals than before. The highest gold medals that Indonesia has ever had was in 1992, 92. It was Alan Budi Kusuma and Susi Susanti. The first time, I believe, badminton was in competition, right? Since then, we never hit 2. We only have 1, right? So of course, you hope we can hit 2 and probably more, right? So then what are you gonna do? So I said, look, even if we get 2 or 3, which I hope we can get 3 or more, the next guy in town, whether the US, the UK, China, will get like maybe close to 100 sometimes, right? We're nobody. We may be somebody in G20, but we're nobody over here. We're ranked number 40, right? And not only we're nobody in the global context, nobody really follow, and rightly so, in Indonesia, right? Olympics. I mean, they will follow All England, but they will probably not follow so much on Olympics, except the badminton portion, right? So there is this thing that I heard in the past when I was young. I'm still young, but memasyarakatkan olahraga, mengolahragakan masyarakat. So I thought, okay, maybe, especially one of our businesses is in media. Maybe this can mean something this time. Back in the days, I don't know whether you guys watch Rocky Balboa, right? Like Rocky 4, there was Ivan Drago versus Rocky Balboa. Some of us who still watch that, we almost cry at the end of it. Because Rocky Balboa, work up there in the mountain with the wood, chopping the woods, and also like the carriage of horses, versus Ivan Drago from Russia, that's like, using all the high-tech equipments. So maybe this type of, David and Goliath will be quite interesting. Even if you don't make it, they become somebody. Because do you know how many people will hopefully be qualified? Take a wild guess. And of course, this is not for Pak Hamdan from, Menpora. Take a wild guess. Just give me a number. How many? And I'll tell you, there are 10,000 qualified athletes in the world in this 8 billion people. How many from Indonesia, you think? Take a wild guess. Qualified only, not medals.
Any numbers?
Well, it's going to be probably max 30. Yeah. So wouldn't it be nice if this 30 people, between now and then, they can be seen as somebody fighting for the country as they are fighting for the country, buat Merah Putih, buat Indonesia Raya. And whether they win or not, and I hope they win at least 2, 3, 4 gold medals, right? Then, when they come back, they're proud. Their family will be proud. Their brothers or sisters will be proud, right? And after all, it's, Rocky Balboa versus Ivan Drago, right? Then if you watch nowadays NBA or Netflix, you saw Giannis, right? That's a nice story. You can make Giannis out of, all these, athletes, right? So then that's number 1, right? And number 2, after we want to do that, we want to see how we can quote unquote influence the new government coming up, so that they will put more money into sports. Today, they put 0.08% of the GDP for sports, right? And there's this 80-20 rule, but there's not 99-1 rule, right? So you got to do better than that, right? Again, I'm not saying anything. We should focus on education. We should focus on infrastructure and all that. But if you believe the economy will grow 1% more, maybe you put that percent there. I don't know, just something I love. And to just give you perspective as well, other countries spend up to 10%, some 5%, average probably 4%. So anyway, so how do we make sure that this Olympics can not only personify the athletes, but also make the government, the stakeholders know that, hey, we got to put money in the sports, right? Because sports sell. Sport can be industries, right? So that's why I thought, I'm excited. And lastly, I want to say, 80% of the mission going to France is of course sports. That's what I'm asked to do. But 20% has to be something else. 20% has to be trade mission. 20% has to be investment mission. It has to be cultural mission, right? Because people would appreciate that a country like Indonesia, who just finished election democratically, and number two, that people hope to be a superpower from global south, trying to do well in the Olympics. So it's like beating the odds kind of thing. So I would like to have, kalau di Prancis apa sih ini ya? What's the newspapers in France?
Agence de France.
Okay,
AFP.
whatever that one, right? It's like Indonesia trying to beat the odds, right? With the mission of sports, trade, investment, and culture. And lastly, it's not from me, but from the President Jokowi. We want to bid for 2036 Olympics, right? So you know what happened when we bid for such a thing like that? A lot of things will follow into pieces, right? I mean, in a good way, right? Fall to pieces. So anyway,
Doing great things as CDM Indonesia. Let's give a round of applause. Let's mainstream our Indonesian athletes, advocating the Indonesia government, and makes sense. Whilst you and many other Indonesian business leaders in Paris to do more than just sports. Panin, do you think Indonesia has a chance to actually host Olympics 2036? I know Mexico dropped out.
I think we have a chance, 2036. And it's a good time to do it, right? If you think about it, 12 years. So the athletes that will be competing right now is still between 6 to 12 years old. So we can actually prepare some athletes for that. And 12 years, we can build a lot of infrastructure that we don't have yet. And at least that's a good way to focus everybody on one objective, right? So we're still the same like everybody else. When there is a goal, there's a mission, there's an ambition, aspiration, then everybody should chase the same dream.
Fantastic. Well, I know you recently met with the vice chairwoman of the Team GB, the British Olympic Association. The UK also takes about 12 years to really transform ahead of Olympics 2012. So hopefully, I'm sure there are more that can be done. Pani, now move on to the second segment. We want to look into some of your, because this is the theme around looking at some of the sustainability ESG initiatives that we want to look at. You are known as one of the Indonesia net zero leaders here, championing through Kadin and also your personal business. Would love to get your thoughts. How and why are you pivoting the Bakrie Group towards decarbonization? And if you can explain a little bit on what some of these sustainability initiatives are, and really why are you driving this, not anyone else?
Well, first of all, why the group is doing it is pretty obvious. 85% of our revenues is hydrocarbon and fossil fuel, and they're finite, and they're not popular anymore, right? Despite I think, in some cases, they're still the most efficient base load energy. But other than that, the only way, the direction is clear. you gotta go renewable. So why the group is doing it? Actually, on the one hand, we want to do good things for the environment, for the next generation. But the second thing also, we believe that now is actually possible to do it because of technology and also capital being put into clean technology. And the third thing, I think Indonesia, I have always said that, can be the carbon state, the Saudi Arabia of decarbonization. I really believe that. Because again, below the ground, we have all the critical minerals we need, right? Nickel is just one of them. Copper, even more popular, I think is going to be in the future, and so on and so forth. Zinc, tin. But above the ground, Indonesia has renewable energy potential of 500 gigawatt. To just give you some idea, the whole Indonesia today has about 70 gigawatts, 70. So when you say about 500, that's a lot, right? So with what? With everything you can think of. Solar, hydro, wind, geothermal, again, with technology and capital, right? And lastly, Indonesia has the biodiversity that can be good for many things, carbon capture, peatland, mangroves, forest, even coral reef, seagrass, right? Those are assets. One day, I think people will be able to fairly value nature. So by protecting our nature, the other side of the world need to reward Indonesia for doing that. So I think that's why, right? And also I think it's going to be interesting geopolitical shift to whoever can decarbonize better than anybody else, right? Because per capita basis, average CO2 emission per year, I believe, is about 4, right? US is 15, China is 10, Japan is probably somewhere there, 8. Indonesia is 2, right? But we have to decarbonize, but we gotta also grow the economy along with that. Because remember, Indonesia still is $5,000, 100 per capita, right? This is compared to all those countries that probably, tenfolds than us, right? So just because they have done the industrialization 300 years earlier, doesn't mean we cannot grow. We have a lot of brothers and sisters. We have 280 million of them that also want to grow in life, and they are as worthy as any one of us to get better education, to get better welfare, and to compete regionally, globally, and so on. So I think our pivot to the group is just one of many groups that will do it and should do it. But I think this is one of the engine for Indonesia to get out of the middle income trap, right? And try to fivefold the economy by 2045, for example. So this is exciting. I wish, I could be, 15, 20 years younger, because then I can focus on just clean energy, technology, and all that, and AI. I think if you could focus on those two things, I think you're going to do quite well going forward there.
Thank you, Panin. And we'll come to the audience real quick, and I want you to have the opportunity to ask questions. It's quite rare that we have him sit down here and ready to be grilled. But just before that, Panin, so you went to the States for education and work at Wall Street, back in the day. So you were one of us in the US, right? And then when you came back, what would be good to get a little bit of your thoughts. One thing that you learned during that period of coming back home at the time, what was the one thing that you found, and what is it that you remember until now that you hold dear, that you think would be a recipe for success? I think that would be one thing that a lot of us here would want to learn especially those that who just came back from overseas?
I think work ethics. Take athletes, right? You have heard how hard Kobe Bryant, worked day in, day out, even before the formal training. And work ethics is pretty universal and cross-cultural. And people really appreciate work ethics because I think with work ethics, you can get stuff done, right? Because a lot of people are very good in identifying problems, in elaborating what the problems are, but getting stuff done is something else. So work ethics and getting stuff done, I think it is as much as ethics, it's as much as mentality. Right? Now, where did I learn about work ethics? Well, I learned about it in an investment bank in Wall Street called Salman Brothers. I mean, in itself, it's already notorious being in Wall Street and Salman Brothers. No longer there, probably because of that. You work really hard. You never see sun outside, even on Sunday, because you came in quite early and then you go home quite late. And when you divide the salary by the hours you put in, it's actually below minimum wage, right? But everybody still want to go there because they can get a good experience. They can go and apply for MBA and all that. But it wasn't for me to go to the business school right away because financial crisis hit over here in Indonesia, in the region, including our family. So Bakrie Brothers, which is the flagship of the company, which I'm running now, back then, we had to let go almost all of our ownerships so that we had only 2.5% left there. So how do we get back? It's almost nothing, spectacular. It's just hard work, diligent, honest, build trust, that kind of stuff, right? So if I can share with you what would I look for in people who wanna work with me, work for me, be my partners, is somebody who can, have the same discipline, the same work ethics, the same, getting things done mentality than anything else. Because I think in terms of education, aptitude, IQ, you can quickly see, right? But I think work ethics, the more I think about it, is really a mindset.
Thank you, Jivan, and I think it's great. Work ethics, just like athletes, right? I think we need the pros in any industries. We need both. So you'll be dealing with a lot of athletes at the CDM, but I'm sure in your organization as well, there are lots of the experts here. I'll just open up for questions now. If you could introduce your name, where you're from, or which organization you're working, and then ask very quick question. Anyone? Just put your hand up. If not, then just whilst waiting. I mean, I'm gonna ask you, so I did warn you guys. But just whilst waiting for questions from the audience. On the sustainability, you share a lot of the background and why Indonesia should pursue sustainability untuk Indonesia Emas to really escape from middle income trap. Any particular sustainability initiatives that you rolled out recently, Anindya, that you would like to share? Because I'm sure many of us also would like to see what are tangible things that have been rolled out recently.
I'll share a few things, not to just showcase what we have done, but probably hopefully it can spur other ideas in probably different vertical or industries. So, okay, you talk a lot about this decarbonization, energy transition, but where do we start, right? It's such a big space. It's like going into Harry Potter world, right? It's like, where do we start, right? So we decided to start with buses, not because it is the most sexy. The most sexy will be the Tesla, right? The four-wheelers, that's pretty cool, right? Or even two-wheeler, I think is pretty cool. 120 million two-wheelers in Indonesia. But we thought probably we should start with buses. What's so cool about buses? I mean, that's pretty boring, right? But the good thing about buses, I thought, is a public transportation mostly. Therefore, it is public. So if you do anything good with it, more public will know. And hopefully it can accelerate whatever you're trying to do, in this case, electrification. And plus, these buses, they are big, therefore they emit a lot of CO2. So if you can have, neutral, carbon emission, then you can save a lot. Especially if you are coming from a country that still subsidizes oil, right? So good for the environment is free marketing. Number three, it is also a good business because you deal with a provincial authority and you have a long-term contract. And it just helps to have BYD as our partner and the leadership over there. Mention, hey, from your body shape, your posture, let's go with B2B. B2C sounds good, but maybe when you grow up. But you don't have the infrastructure, the experience, the financing, so maybe later, right? But this type of things, just the 60 buses we have, it has gone around 5 million kilometers, saving about 5,000 tons of CO2. And God knows how many trees that you plant as an equivalent. But it makes you feel good, especially when you come from fossil fuel and hydrocarbon background. Because then you say, hey, maybe we can be the unlikely hero in this kind of thing. Because otherwise, who's going to fund this transition? Anyway, please.
Fantastic. We already have some questions. I see one. Okay, let's give a round of applause. Apologies. Because it is trailblazing, and there's not a lot of other successful companies who have actually managed to electrify a number of public transport. I think the first and most substantial market share already. So questions from the audience. I saw Wijaya raise his hand a little bit. Maybe someone could, anyone else's? Feel free. Okay, it's two. And then? Okay, we want ladies, gender diversity, we just celebrate. Okay, three, that's good. Okay, Vijay, do you want to stand up and introduce yourself?
First, thank you, Mas Anin, for coming in and for providing a very insightful chat earlier as well. Stephen, also from, Stephen, but same Stephen, so I go by Wijaya when Stephen Maslin is around. I think one thing that really resonated with me from your earlier conversation was when you said, how do we make sure that Indonesia can escape the middle income trap? Really resonated with me. Now, I'm blessed to be in an industry that is rather globally connected. The company that I lead, we happen to be around 60 to 70% export. But at the same time, the way we're looking at it at the moment is that the world is interesting, right? You see a lot of China plus one heading to Indochina as well as India. You see there's a lot of trend of reshoring. You see there's a lot of trend of, this geopolitical blocks happening. The quote unquote new Cold War is happening, right? Given Indonesia's neutrality in this, and given where things have locked into place at the moment, Mexico has their own thing, the US has its own thing, Vietnam as well as India is the new China, quote unquote. What sectors of the economy do you think is Indonesia poised to grow aside from the upstream as well as the downstreaming initiative that the president has signed on to? Thank you.
So the president-elect, Representative, already said quite a lot.
Yes.
Good question. Finally.
It's a very good question, Stephen. And outside the sport activism, my other activism is business activism, right? So with Kadin or APAC Business Advisory Council, exactly because of this, right? So how do Indonesia play this so-called the business or the economic of geopolitics well, right? Because constitutionally, Indonesia has to be bebas aktif, free and active, right? And I think that's a good strategy from day one, right? You don't want to just pick side and then be right for 20, 30 years and then not so right for the other 20, 30 years, right? Kasian, I mean, we have a lot of people who live in Indonesia, right? So, look, what is happening now, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer that US and China will grow independently, right? They will have their own market. They will have their own technology. They will have their own strategy for capital allocation. And it will happen for, I think, another 100 years or so. Right? So Indonesia is right there, I think, in the middle in a way that you actually matter because you have scale. Right? Yes, it is not 1.2 billion people like apparently India is the largest country in the world now, and then China, right? But 300 million people, it's quite sizable, right? Then also geographically, I think Indonesia is almost going to be, a swing voter, the middle force, right? And I think this middle force, middle power, swing voter is a good place to be, right? But there are a lot of assumptions that you have to make in order for Indonesia to play the role very well, right? Well, policies, among other, are very important. You have to welcome a lot of not only money coming in, services coming in, products, but also people coming into Indonesia. Because I think one of the most important thing in running businesses, growing businesses, running a country, again, people, right? It's not easy to find one, it's not easy to groom one, and certainly not easy to have many of them at the same time, right? But other than policies, which come back to leadership, right? The rest we pretty much have all. We spoke a little bit about whatever under the ground, above the ground, and so on, right? But also, I think Indonesia needs to have ambition, aspiration, right? We spoke a little bit about 2036 Indonesia, Olympics, right? We may not get it, right? I hope we get it, but we may not get it. But when everybody is going that way, I think that 0.08% of GDP, I think it's going to go to 2, just by saying that, right? And then people are going to compete, and then the family are not going to be embarrassed if the kids become athletes because they're going to get education and go to Stanford, go to UCLA, go to Oxford, whatever, and do well, right? Now, coming back to your question, Stephen, what kind of industries will be good, right? I think about like what would be a value addition industries that you can add value in Indonesia and export to other countries, right? That not many people feel comfortable to build it there, right? And it's almost like you have to pick a winner, right? So the 3 countries that people are talking again and again now is again Indonesia, Saudi, and also India. They all pick winners, right? They don't know whether it's going to win or not, just like the Olympics, right? Just say, hey, I'm going to go there, right? So in picking winners, one of them, like what you said, is the downstreaming of critical minerals with clean energy, protecting biodiversity, and all that. But I do think in terms of the FMCG innovation, it's still largely possible in Indonesia because if you can create fast mover consumer goods for 300 million people, you can probably make for 800 million people, the ASEAN, and there's a free trade agreement to do this, and probably you can do more with that, right? Number two. Number three, I think food is big. Food is big, right? And it's big and important for us because we need it, and we're still importing rice right now. But we have to crack this code, right? We have land of this size, plenty of water, and we have a lot of people that can be market and people who can work. This agribusiness, has to be the name of the game in the future, right? And it's also a part of national security, right? Energy security is a part of the number one I mentioned to you about. Those are the things, with all the derivatives of those two things, that what I would do, right? And please also not forget that industrialization for basic infrastructure, Indonesia still need a lot, right? We say, a lot of toll roads are being built, a lot of bridges being built, a lot of dams being built in Indonesia already. When you talk about apple to apple, this is probably 1/10 of where we should be, right? So, I'm an engineer, so I think engineers will make a good comeback other than the digital engineers, right? So I think, send your kids later on to do civil engineering. Let them say, hey, you should be proud because, I don't think digital can replace building bridges. You still have to, do all of those things. And anyway, thank you for the question, Stephen.
Round of applause. We have a question. Do you want to stand up? Maybe give one mic. And also, yeah. Maybe we'll take two right away, if that's okay. And if there is anyone else who would like to ask questions, just raise your hand. I'll try to capture.
Okay.
Silakan.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the opportunity, Pak Anin Bakrie and Pak Stephen Marcelino. It's great to see you here. And my name is Rafa Skocho. I'm from the Asia Group. And for the question, Pak Anin, as we know, we have a regional power called ASEAN. I myself in the Asia Group, a platform covering Southeast Asia to promote positive news among Southeast Asia. And also we also aim to make a synergy with Southeast Asian countries and Southeast Asian entities, and to build better understanding among us. So how can Indonesia, within the framework of the ASEAN regional power, become the center of decarbonization, the center of energy transition? What do you think in our regional power? Because I see that ASEAN is a region with countries that are similar with social economy and also social culture. And ASEAN also has a mission to have an energy transition, as told by Dr. Kau Kim Horn, the Secretary General. And I believe we can do it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafa. We'll just take one more question. Lady over there.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nur Baiti. Actually, I would like to ask question like Mr. Stephen's question. Anyways, I would like other questions. My first question is, you talked about work ethics. Could you share with us about your experience? Tell me about a time you faced an ethical dilemma. And my second question is, I want to know your opinion about our energy security and sustainability in future if we face like geopolitical issues like Russia and Ukraine war. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shit. Tough questions. I'm not applying to become foreign minister, right? That's what you call. But anyway, very, very good questions, right? First, Rafa, right? So you're a tennis player? Are you a tennis player? Your family play tennis? You play tennis? No. Okay. I see. Okay. So I think ASEAN first, and then sustainability, and then ethics. Wow. You're not making it easy. After this, I'm gonna go. Number one, I think ASEAN. ASEAN is probably, I think I'm pretty sure I know this, is the most peaceful and stable region in the world. Okay. And in itself is already a huge thing nowadays, right? And number two, 800 million people out of 8 billion people in the world. And then the intra-trade is almost 8 trillion US dollars, and also the GDP give and take around the same, right? So it's a big economy. I just got back from Melbourne 2-3 days ago, and they have this ASEAN Australia 50th anniversary. So you know how Australia likes to be a part of Asia in sports, right? I used to think that maybe because they are taller, maybe they can beat the hell out of us better in sports, right? But economically, they also want to be a part of us. But this time it's not for competition, but this time it's actually for complementarity, right? Is it? Yeah, basically complementary, economy, right? So one, we need to find all the 3 C's that Stephen is talking about. How to connect, how to collaborate, and how to consolidate. In Indonesia, both of you have done a very good job, right, in the ASEAN chairmanship, right, last year. Pak Arshad led this beautiful effort last year to show that Indonesia can take lead in ASEAN. And even right now, I believe the chairman is Laos. Laos wants Indonesia to still take lead, but of course from behind, because Indonesian leadership not only impactful, but it's also inclusive. It's very important to be inclusive, because these 10 countries plus one observer, Timor-Leste, they are different. They're different countries, right? And what's amazing is that you can still have peace and stability with these differences, right? So Indonesia has to think about how to leverage our market, but also how to collaborate with the neighbors, right? And I think it is as much as economic and business strategy, it is as much also interpersonal skills, right? But I think Indonesia can do it because we are coming from, archipelago with a lot of dialects, a lot of, different ethnicities and so on. So I'm hopeful. So you guys should think, hey, if you think 280 million people is a good market, now start thinking about 800 million people. Because the leadership today have already charted a nice growth and also a trajectory for you to be their leader, right? This is controversial statement, but I think Indonesia in ASEAN is like maybe Germany in EU, and ASEAN is better than EU, right? And number 2, I think about, before ethical question, sustainability business. Is that correct? Just please shout.
Geopolitical issues like Russia and Ukraine war. What do you think about our energy security in future and our sustainability?
Yeah. Okay. So first, let's think about. I think we touched a little bit that we have 70 gigawatt of power today, right? I think if you want to be apple to apple, like the of let's just say Malaysia, right? You need to multiply that number by 4 times, right? Want to be apple to apple with Singapore, you multiply that by 8, right? So you need a lot of energy. Right? So this energy, we're blessed with stuff from hydrocarbon and fossil fuels like oil and gas, coal, but those things are finite, right? They're going to be gone the more you take it. I mean, you can find more, but they're going to be gone after you use it, right? And plus, to do exploration and production, it needs money, and money needs financing. And nowadays, it's not very popular to get financing for those, right? But still, that is a good baseload for us, right? Therefore, renewable energy is very important for us because we gotta make it work, right? If we can make it work, we can build Indonesia, modernize Indonesia faster than before by far, and we can even be exporter of, energy. Then you can be, sort of like how it sounds so crazy, but you can be like Russia to EU, right? But you can be like that to ASEAN. I hope this is not recorded. It sounds like Dr. Evil. And number three, I guess last question: ethical instances. Well, I think ethics will be tested when things don't work out. Right? When things work out, it's very easy to get the road, frequently traveled, right? So again, let me just give you example. In 97, 98, the crisis hit us. So let's say our debt is like this in US dollars. And US dollars has been very stable for quite some time in 97, 20, 30 years in a row. But then the exchange rate weakened by 8 times. So our debt from here to here, right? Then our asset from here to here, right? Now, so there are many ways to do this restructuring. One is to just, say, hey, force majeure, wait, right? Let when everything is clear, IMF come in, there are, regulatory issues, framework are set, then we'll talk, right? You can also just delay because they can really not do much at the moment. But so what we did as a group, we thought, hey, we gotta think a long-term view. These people, will come back again and they will remember. And they will remember during this difficult time. So one day I just got back from, Salomon Brothers, Wall Street guy, back then it was like 27-year-old, right? So giving advice to my father and uncles. This is how they do it in Wall Street. This is too big to fail. There was no movie like that, but there was like, a Wall Street, Gordon Gekko style, right? We should do that, right? But no. And then you're too young. Just look at me, how I deal. So my father and uncles went to the room and say, in this room and this many people, they say, hey, I owe you this much. It's not your fault, and my fault is going this much, and my asset is going this now. So how about this? Let me give you away all of the company except 2.5%. Why 2.5%? Some Muslim believe that's at least the money that you can give to the people who need, right? But if I run this company and you want me to run it, otherwise, how are you going to run this company and with that kind of debt? Every 5 years, if we do what we say, you give back our shares, portion by portion, and that is more than enough for us and more than enough for you because you will have more than us, right? It's basically profit sharing, right? So that's how we did it. And the meeting with other groups are usually years. That meeting was done in half an hour. So everybody was like, wait a minute. And then shake hand. And then the lawyers will do the rest. So the Bakrie family gave away the company they built by that time, I would say 60 years, 97.5% of that in a shake hand deal. And that's it. So from being an owner, coming into the room, coming out, now you're an employee. right? But now we come back to the 90% already, but not automatic. It's 25 years. So it took 25 years to get back what we lost in that 2 years. But that's okay, right? But we are, stronger, we believe, right? So I think that is something that I want to share with you. Maybe not the same exact. I hope the story comes across that, hey, think about the long-term view versus short-term, because people will test you not in a good times but in a bad times, number one. Number two, bad times will always come back again, but the good times can always come back. There is this thing I keep saying, my father told me, his father told him that, friends and fortune, pretty much like bayangan, like shadow, right? In a dark time, your friends will go, right? And just acknowledge that, right? But when the sun shines again, they will come, bayangan, right? But therefore, you got to work hard not to be in the dark too long, right? And one way to do it is to face the issue head on, right? No matter how hard it is, and people remember, because characters, right? That's another thing, characters, right? And people value that, and that's why in Lala interviews, right? They ask you, okay, what are your biggest challenges and how do you get out of it? What they're trying to look for is like, the character. And you can only see the characters when you're in the dark.
A lot of golden nuggets there. Let's give a round of applause, Pak Anin. So Chief Anin, I've been reminded that you may have to move on soon, but I've been told there is a queue from Holland. Straight, they want to ask you a question. Can we have one last question? Sorry for the rest of the audience. One last question. I believe Hans from Holland is.
Yeah, can you hear me, Stephen?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Hans, and I'm a Secretary General of GIPA, and also have Head of Membership Indonesian Professional in the Netherlands. I'm currently based in The Hague, Netherlands, and working in EY Amsterdam as International Tax and Transfer Pricing Consultant. So as a background, we want to also elaborate on GIPA. GIPA have 24 professional hubs worldwide, 7 in Europe, 8 in APAC, and 9 in the Americas. And in the future, we also want to do overseas professional hubs gathering in Paris this July. So in collaboration with professional hub in France and potentially KBRI Paris. So perhaps Pa Anindya can also join us if you have any time. So the question from my side is, as Indonesian professionals working abroad, what tangible contributions can we do to promote ESG initiatives in Indonesia? So perhaps from financing perspective, Indonesian professionals working abroad can invest in sustainable financing or sustainable business. Or maybe from policy perspective, we can also contribute our ideas in form of working paper. So yeah, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Hans.
Thank you, Hans. So next time I come by to Holland, Amsterdam, maybe we can meet with the other 24 and yourself, of course, right?
Yes.
And how do we have many of you overseas contribute? Well, the simple question is, please come back, right? So, I was talking to Mas Hamdan just now shortly, right? We say, look, let's take a look at this diaspora outside, right? Because they sometimes have mixed blood. You don't have to be mixed blood, but you can come back and help us to win more medals, because in swimming, height, size, a lot of times matter. And number two, when you are coming from overseas, the competitive environment is already built for you to be a good athlete. So the same analogy, I think you can say it also to Indonesian professionals out there, right? You're built already a little bit differently, right? Even though you are 100% Indonesians, because the environment is much more competitive. And the information flow is probably much more converging over there. Now, what can you do? I think, other than, I think go back and look for opportunities here, which we need a lot of people, and probably you can be somebody over here much more, I'm sorry to say, than just be, again, sorry, numbers outside, right? But again, I'm not saying you cannot be Sunda Pinchay of Indonesia. I'll be very proud. You cannot be, a lot of the Indian, CEOs, diasporas that can be in the top 10 countries in the world. I would love for you to be there. But I think, other than that, research is certainly a big thing. If there is a way for you to do good research over there in the areas that we think we need, so make sure that you're connected to the Ministry of Education or Bappenas, right? Or Kadin or corporations, right? Then that'll be good, doing research. And number three, also, if you work for companies that receive interns, take a lot of Indonesian interns, right? I think, those things really mean a lot, right? Because, these students, they need to get some experience to do whatever they want to do in life. And if you can provide them with that, that's good. And then during your spare time, maybe you can just use Zoom to teach English if you speak very good English to Indonesians, right? I'm a believer that, anything you can do for the society, like teaching English, will be a good, eye opener, and also, I think, needle will move the needle. Yeah. So those are some ideas, right? But there are many other ideas. But I think you should think about it, because Indonesia, look, if you look at the math, let's say I'm like half wrong, right? If Indonesia is not growing, 8 times, maybe Indonesia grows 4 times. 4 times in 20 years is still a good market to be. Yeah. Right? And the good thing about growing market, you know what? You don't have to fight with one another with the same cake. The cake is growing, right? You can fight for the new cake, right? And that's fair enough, right?
Thank you, Pak Anin. Let's give a round of applause for Pak Anin. Thanks, Hans, for joining us. Pak Anin, we have a little something for you. If we invite you to, and I also invite Hilmi and the team to also take a quick picture. Okay. I think what Hans earlier suggested, Pak Anin, that GIPA made up 24 overseas professional hubs all across Europe, and GIPA has a member of about 8,000 people. Hilmi, you want to take a picture?
Let's have everyone join. Everyone on the first row, please.
We also would like to invite Pak Hamdan, also Mas Ferro from Pijar Foundation to take pictures. Thank you. And I'll hand over to Jason Riyadi, our MC, for our next segment. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to invite everyone back to their seats. We will be beginning the next stage segment of this event tonight shortly. Thank you, Stephen, Anin. Thank you. And let's have a round of applause, everyone. And thank you. All right, so we've gone through quite a lot of interesting topics earlier, right? And who knew that what we'll be thinking about today would be electrification, decarbonization, all these topics, right? And on a more meteor side, right, they mentioned Indonesia winning gold medals at the Olympics, Indonesia hosting the Olympics one day, and Indonesia achieving Golden Indonesia 2045. Who knows whether we'll achieve these or not? But then, as what Pa Anin said just now, right, even if you don't make it, you become somebody. And I feel that's interesting. I think it's important to be able to dare to dream and to dare to try. But anyway, I think that's enough for the first segment. Let's move on to the next segment. So for this next segment, it will take the form of a panel, and I'd like to invite my colleague, Difa, on stage. Difa is the head of public advocacy at GIPA. Everyone, please give her a round of applause. Difa, the floor is all yours.
All right, so good evening, everyone. So my name is Difa. Thank you so much, Jason, for introducing me. So thank you so much for everyone who's been attending to this event tonight. We've heard such a great insights from our speaker earlier, Chief Anin, and also like moderated by our chairman, who is, just like Hilmi said, coming all the way from London just to come here to host this event. And I believe like we've learned a lot from what Chief Anin actually have delivered earlier about like Indonesia's dream to pivoting into the more sustainable and healthy future. In this case, Chief Anin has been leading like a really great business in lots of industries, and in this case, like what he's been doing is basically trying to make sure that the Indonesia can achieve those dreams, to make sure that Indonesia can be one of those like high income country in the future in terms of like not only for leveraging our like resources, natural resources, but also like how can we also support Indonesia's human capital to be better in the future so that we can leverage that. And then yeah, basically in tonight's discussion we'll be joined by a really great panels as well that will be here in front of sharing the stage with me tonight. So we'll be having like our representatives, the special advisor to the Minister of Youth and Sports, and also like a really great young inspiring person that has been working on Indonesia's leading philanthropy organization. So without further ado, I would like to invite Bapak Hamdan Hamedan, the special staff for Minister of Sports and Youth. So you may have the floor, Pak. Thank you so much, Pak. And then next joining us as well, Mas Ferro. So Mas Ferro is the executive director of Pijar Foundation. He's been working in Microsoft, leading for the past like few years. It's been great to have all of you gentlemen here today. So before that, maybe I just want to like appreciate everyone who's coming here tonight and want to wish all the women here the International Women's Day. So let's give a round of applause for all of us and also our speakers for tonight. So right, so Pak Hamdan, we've heard about like Indonesia's going to be participating in the Paris Olympics this year, and it is such a great opportunity for us. And also we've heard that there's a lot of sports branches, cabur-cabur yang baru yang Indonesia is also leading, like skateboard, surfing. I recently also just started to like, try a new hobby, doing surfing and all, but we would really love to hear, your perspective, and also want to hear like your initiative through the Ministry of Sports and Youth about like, how do you envision the healthy future, more youth to be involved? So would love to hear from you.
Thank you. Terhormat Pak Anin, Pak Ferro, Pak Steven, Pak Hilmi, Pak Jimmy, Yani, Pak Okder, Mbak Diva. It's an honor to be here. I remember a quote by Winston Churchill. He used to say that healthy citizens are the greatest assets any country can have. This is especially true because when you're talking about healthy citizens, they contribute not just their labor, their knowledge, their toil, but also the fact that they can live longer, they contribute more. And as we can see, since the 1960s, we are actually, Indonesia, when it comes to life expectancy, has increased exponentially. In 1960, our average lifespan is about 46 years old, and now is about 72 years old. So this is an important asset for us to contribute meaningfully toward the health and the society in general. However, as we notice that as we progress, not just in terms of economic developments, we are also facing some environmental ramification that goes alongside of the economic growth that we aim. Perhaps we are trying to escape the middle income trap. And also it has some environmental ramification. For example, in many of the big cities in Indonesia, the air quality is disconcerting, to say the very least. In fact, if you are living in Jakarta, according to Chicago University, the air that you breathe is actually shaving off 2.3 years of your lifespan. 2.3 years. So the impact is not only in the numbers of days or in the numbers of months, but also in the numbers of years. That's when it comes to how health is also cannot be separated from the fact what kind of environment that we are living in. That's number one. When it comes to health in general, President Jokowi in the 37th anniversary of National Sports Day states that sports should be the main fulcrum of Indonesian people, of the Indonesian government, that everyone should be part of the physical activity, not just those who are actually in government, but also in the private sectors. So the government are pushing toward more physical activity for its citizen. And if you notice that this is in line, or this is in light of some of the research that has been conducted by many Indonesian universities and also outside universities such as Stanford University, that indicates that Indonesian are one of the least active people in the world. In fact, there are studies indicating that we, compared to other countries, we only walk roughly 3,500 steps daily, compared to 7,000 recommended steps daily, or even 10,000 steps ideally. When it comes to the length, the duration of physical activities, we are also lagging behind other OECD countries. For example, we are spending 1.5 to 2 hours a week only on sport. So before I go further, does anyone have you done any sport today? Have you done any physical activity today? Good for you. So yeah, the amount of time that most Indonesians spend is roughly 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours. Only 0.3% or 30% of the population are considered to be active. So government are pushing hard to encourage people participation in any physical activities, because when we look at the numbers, for example, Netherlands, they're spending 12 hours weekly, or Germany, 11 hours, or Romania, around 11 hours. And this has significant ramification. There's something called, before we talk about Olympics and how to create an Olympian, for example, they are the most elite people actually in the world. Like Anindya said, they are less than 0.001% of the population before we go there. But there is something called the compound benefits of physical activities, even for adults. Those who are routinely exercise, not only perhaps their waist are slimmer, not just they improve their mood, their confidence, their self-esteem, but statistically speaking, in the United States, those who regularly exercise tend to make more money. They are roughly making 8% more than those who don't exercise. Not just that, because of their constant activities, they are also less likely to develop cardiovascular disease, which in turn putting less burden on the economy as a whole. And when they get married, those who are actively participating in sport tend to pass on their good culture, good habits to their children, resulting in more physical, active children. So this is what we call a compound benefit of exercise. So the exercise is not only impacting you personally, but also impacting your career, and also your family, and also your future generation. And another thing that we at Kemenpora are serious taking on in terms of health, and it's also something that is detrimental toward our health. In a country such as Indonesia, 70 million of our population are heavy smokers. 70 millions. So that's the size of Thailand. That's the size of the United Kingdom, where Churchill, I just quoted. 70 million. In youth, for example, 1 out of 4 youth is actually smokers. And when we think about the tax that the government get from purchase of cigarettes, when we actually calculated the costs incurred by smoking consumption, is really bad. According to Ibu Sri Mulyani, Menkyu, and according to Minister of Health, the incomes coming from the tax of cigarette is about 150 trillion. But the public health costs because of cigarette consumption is 450 trillion. In other words, 3 times more than the government generate. So this, what we really need to tackle on in order to create a healthy society and productive society, because when we create the healthy societies, then we can start talking about how can we compete and better in sport. Because you cannot have cigarette smoking soccer players. You cannot compete against Lionel Messi like that. You cannot compete against Cristiano Ronaldo, who are on strict diet and very strict regimen. That would be my introduction.
Well, thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause for Pak Hamdan. So that is really, I mean, all those things that you mentioned are actually very concerning, Pak, noticing that, yes, a lot of most of our population are still having this unhealthy lifestyle, but we do really work on that in the future. But let's now hear from Mas Ferro. We would like to hear your thoughts, basically, and then also maybe you can share things from your perspective in a community base, and also would love to hear that from you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for GIPA for inviting us to speak here from Pijar Foundation. So Pijar Foundation is a non-profit philanthropy that focuses on accelerating Indonesia's future to be one of the top economy in the world. And we try to achieve that by 3 things. First one is accelerating the education. Second one is accelerating the entrepreneurship. And the third one is establishing a supportive climate for innovation and the people to thrive through public policy. So we have done that. This is our 3rd year now. We have given benefit to 45,000 people and connected to around 3,000 organizations globally already. So, and we did that in only 2 years now. So we are coming to our 3rd year. So regarding to your questions about, I'll put it in a broader context about the future of Indonesia. We call Indonesia Maju or Indonesia Emas 2045, Golden Indonesia 2045. The idea is that in 2045, which is 21 years from now, I will be 55 years old. How old will you be in 2045? 55 as well, right? We will be 50s, right? You will be 40s, and my mother, I don't know, maybe will be 80s and so on, right? We will be aging, right? We will be aging society already in 2045. And if we pull back, there is a very important year, 2034. 2034, which is only 10 years from now, our demographic bonus will expire. Our demographic bonus will expire, means that all of these young people, energetic people, these smart kids and so on, they will be starting to become an aging population. Aging population means less active, less productive and start, getting all of this sickness, become the burden for the government and so on. So means that our window of opportunity is only 10 years, not 21 years, but 10 years. If we fail to capture the opportunity in the next 10 years, we are failed forever. That's very important, keynote of the key takeaway of the day. If we fail to become, if we fail to triple at least our income by, 2040, 2034 or 10 years from now, then we will fail to become a negara maju or advanced country in the world. So that's very important. So means that we have talked a lot about we have to do business, we have to do not business as usual, we have to do something extraordinary. But the question is how, right? So I think if I add on top of Mas Hamdan's point about being active, that's very important, because without a healthy society, you will not be able to do whatever you need to do. But at Pijar Foundation, we see a more serious and alternative strategy. If you think about it, right now, most of our population is productive age. But if you look at the statistic, 60% are graduated only stopping at junior high or SMP. 30% is senior high or SMA, and only 10% goes to the university. Can we do more than 10%? Yes, but the capacity of the all university in Indonesia is only 10%. So means that if you want to make all of the productive age goes to university, you have to build more university in only 10 years. It's almost impossible. It's possible, but it's very unlikely. It's very hard. So we think about at Pijar Foundation, we think about what is the alternative pathways for those people that graduated from high school, from senior high school, that cannot go to university, which are accountable for 30% of the population, so that they can have the equal chance to go into the job market. So we at Pijar Foundation, starting this year, will experimenting with micro credential, micro learning, and micro skilling. The idea is that right now, job market, there is an asymmetry of information, right? If you think about companies like TV1 or Bakrie Brothers Group, for instance, they will constantly hire jobs, right? Hire people. But whenever they hire people, they need certain skills level, skills profile. And what we are trying to do at Pijar is we are trying to map the skill profile from the employers, and then basically making the learning provider certification center to adhere with that, to adopt that, so that the students graduating out of the high school, they have two choices, whether they want to go to the university or they just gonna take several courses that build their skill profile, and then with that skill profile they can apply to a job. So what we do differently is that we work with the demand, which is the employer. So starting this year, we are experimenting with that. So our goal this year is that if all the big corporation in Indonesia, if the HR director can state that, hey, when I hire somebody, I will not look at their bachelor degree diploma or S1 ijazah, we will look at their certification, that will change the game, because then the opportunity will be equal, so that those 30% that currently cannot be absorbed in the formal jobs, they will now be absorbed in the formal jobs. The government can get tax out of that, the government can get a BPJS out of that, and so on. So that is our strategy, because a lot of people talking about Indonesia Emas, but the Indonesia Emas definition is really biased with the Jakarta definition. But if you go out of Jakarta, the statistic is really worrying and concerning. 60% only until SMP, 30% SMA, and only 10% university. If you have the privilege of going to overseas like Mas Hamdan and I, then you are part of the 0.5%. We are the 0.5% of Indonesia. Yes, we can make significant changes, but if we only make the changes only for us, the Gini ratio will be even worse, because we will get richer, but a lot of people will get poorer. We don't want that, right? So that is the problem. It's not only about increasing the economy, but also making sure that the economy is not only circulating in that 1%, 2%, but spread, equitable spread. That's kind of the idea that we're trying to push at Pijar Foundation.
Thank you so much, Mas Ferro. So a round of applause for Mas Ferro. So it is such an inspiring initiative that what you've been doing, and also like, yes, I agree so much with you. It's a matter of how we actually make sure that we are equipping our future generations so that our basically our demographic bonus will not come to a waste, and then how we empower these from our communities, and also by leveraging. I heard like you mentioning like micro skillings and all that. Those are very important. So I think it's a great idea. So, but before we move on to the questions, maybe I just want to say hello and greet to our audience that are joining us from all over the professional hubs overseas, basically Pak Hamdan and also Mas Ferro. So we're very happy here that earlier we had Hans that's joining us from Holland, but we do also like have colleagues from coming from London as well, dialing in with us tonight. So, and maybe I would like to ask a question to Pak Hamdan first. So it's really great that you mentioned that Kemenpora has been doing things that to help like a healthier society. But I was just wondering, so maybe if you can share with us, how do you actually envision leveraging sports as a tool for educating youth about the importance of, sustainable living practices? And also maybe if you can also share with us like any initiatives aim at like reducing all these things, and then maybe a practical solution that we as young people and also like our generation can also help and support the government initiative on that as an individual. Thank you, Pa.
It's a very good question. One of the most challenging things facing youth today, if we'll take a look at the Index Pembangunan Pemuda or Youth Development Index, like I mentioned, the fact that many of our youth are consuming tobacco products on daily basis, and 2.3% of our youth are still consuming drugs. Unfortunately, that's another alarming, because what would happen is that it will jeopardize their career in the future, right? Where we are talking about demographic bonus in the next 13 years. So we cannot have many of our youth spending more time in hospital than in labor market or in the job market. We need them to be contributing member of the society. That's why it's the most important asset, like Winston Churchill said, is healthy citizens. And that's one. Another thing that is problematic is the fact that what we have right now as a social media and everything is actually impacting your mental health. Surprisingly, 1 out of 3 youth is actually having a mental health problems. So another thing that at Kemenpora, we are trying to destigmatize talking with specialists, because we need them. From time to time, we need to speak with professional psychologists, right, about some of our issues. And we first and foremost destigmatize that, and we open on opportunities to work with professional psychologists and psychiatrists that would help with youth in need. That's another one. Another thing that we are focusing on is to make sure that our youth today are spending more time in open spaces, because we are living in Jakarta today, despite the fact that our knowledge about sports or physical activity is higher, the participation level of Jakarta population vis-a-vis people who live in Papua and Maluku is the opposite. Actually, people who live in eastern part of Indonesia are spending more time, more active. And the reason why is actually very simple. Because they have more open spaces, free spaces where they can go and exercise. They can do small jog, they can do push-up, they can do sit-ups. So in Jakarta, whenever we have to go to exercise. Unfortunately, those free options are not available. So Kemenpora is pushing the facilities that we own at Kemenpora to be the free public places where every single youth can come and use our facilities for free, and that they can get healthier. And remember, Harvard studies indicate 30 minutes of exercise improve your mood. Only 30 minutes. So do it regularly.
Thank you so much. Yes, and that is very encouraging because I believe like this is also happening like with all of us here who's having like a 9-to-5 jobs. Even sometimes it's more than 9 to 5. We do overtime, and sometimes we also like make excuses about, oh, we don't have time to do that. But in order for us to reach like the healthy society, like you said, because quoting Winston Churchill, it's very important and it's very necessary. And we would like to appreciate so much what Kemenpora has been doing so far. So, and then to Mas Ferro, maybe my question will be, I wonder like in terms of like how you build like the human capital, the Indonesian human capital. What do you see as like the most I want to like ask more about the journey itself, Mas Ferro. Like, how do you see the improvements so far, and also how do you see like where is Indonesia right now, aside from just having the prospects of this bonus, demographic bonus in the future, and where do you see Indonesia is standing now, and where do you see us in the future, and how do you think that equipping these people through like skilling and also like micro skilling can help us to reach a better and a more sustainable society within our communities?
So we can take a look at all the statistic and also rank which Indonesia is compared to the rest of the world, and I think the rank is not satisfying yet, but we are progressing because I think Indonesia made the right decision and investment. In 2013, the minister, Sri Mulyani at that time, the Minister of Finance at that time, under the administration of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono as the president, create a very important investment, which is LPDP scholarship. LPDP scholarship already sent around 30,000 plus best students to study in the best in domestic university and also foreign university. I myself is the awardee of LPDP, and I think most of my team at Pijar Foundation is awardee of LPDP. The reason why I mention LPDP is because if you want to change a country, it's like pulling gerbong. Yeah, pulling a train body with a locomotive, right? With the head of the train, and these people is 30,000 people. So they are maybe only the 0.5% of the society, but they are going to be the creme de la creme, and they're expected to be the people that will drive the changes. And sure, we did, because if you look at the LPDP graduates, they are now become the special advisor to the president. They become the advisor to the minister. They involve and influence the policies a lot. And also with Pijar Foundation, we are doing a lot of catalytic program a lot. So these people coming back from the US, from the Europe, from the Middle East, and also Asia's best university, they come back with an idea because now they see the world. Right, they are not become a katak dalam tempurung if we look at it in Indonesian terms. So they see the world and they want to make Indonesia become that part of the global society, and we accelerate a lot of things. And we see a lot of progresses in that, but that's not enough, because if we only focuses on the elite, which is the 10% people that have the privileges going to university, then we only can increase the Gini ratio, ketimpangan or inequitability. So upskilling through the micro-credential is basically philosophically, we are trying to give equal fighting chance for everybody. Because myself, I was lucky enough, I born in Pekalongan, a very small city, and then I was lucky enough to be able to go to college, to university. And but a lot of my friends are not as lucky as I was, because they are not able to go there. So if you look at the education model. If you go to university, then you can get a good job. But if you cannot go to university, then you will end up with a mediocre or maybe low income job, which is what happened right now. So I think people should be having an equal opportunity to get their living, not by privilege and by piece of paper, but by ability, right? We have to give them a chance to take a courses that, enable them to craft their skills. And more importantly, people need to know what they want to become, because I think there is a survey that released a couple of years back saying that 78% of the university students says that they are salah jurusan, or they are taking the wrong subject. Why? Because they don't know what they want to become. Graduating from university, they don't know what they want to become. Whether they want to become an accountant, a business people, or engineer, they don't know, right? People go to medical school. Why? Because their parent told them so. Because their girlfriend goes to the same school, right? It's just as simple as that. But if you want to really, plan your life, you have to really understand who you are and what you want to become. So I think the understanding about who we are and what we are good at is very important, not only at the personal level, but also at the country level. As a country, Indonesia needs to understand what we are good at, right? What we are good at and what we are not good at. So if we look at the next economy that will propel Indonesia to become the next big economy in the world, we have to understand what is our advantages. One, for sure, is the number of population. Secondly, is the natural resources. We will move to IKN, the Nusantara new capital, and rumors has it that, and Indonesia is so rich, Kalimantan is so rich that if you dig the IKN's soil, just a couple of meters, you will find a coal. You find a coal that rich, right? So imagine, coal is the most efficient way of generating energy. It's very cheap compared to green energy at the moment, right? But if you burn more coal, you get more, pollution and carbon footprint. So means that how can we keep our environment clean while using our own rich natural resources, maybe carbon capture solution and something like that. So we have to think about how can we balance between the richness of our natural resources and the environment. Surely there will be debates, for sure, but we have to find a balance. So I think Indonesia have to find our own way, not dictated by the foreign country, not dictated by the way of other country does it, because we are unique. No country in the world has 270 million people with 200 ethnicity, 200 languages, only us. And we understand about diversity more than everybody in the world. So means that we should not let the other countries dictate, but we should let them teach what they know, but we have to contextualize it in Indonesian own context. Because we have to remember our resources is very rich, and we can be rich without the help of other country even. So if you go to our seas, right, in maybe in the eastern part of Indonesia, in south of Maluku, there is tuna over there. There is fishes over there. We at Indonesia, we will not be starving. Actually, if you're starving, you just stick a stick, and then it will grow with the cassava, right? So means that you have to understand that you are sitting on top of a very rich soil. So means that we have to grow with our own context and our own strategy and our own way. But what I learned is that we still haven't found that way. So means that we as a young generation, I think I really love the mission of GIPA, especially when you say that, managing the reverse culture shock, right? That's great, because when you live so long in the US, so long in the UK, you get accustomed to a very advanced country, everything's easy, but coming back, you are complaining a lot. Do not look at it as a problem, but look at it as a potential challenges to solve and opportunities, because everybody is eyeing on Indonesia. So if you don't take it, somebody else will. And if you don't take the opportunity, Vietnamese will, Chinese will, Indians will. So we are basically have to, utilize our own rich natural resources. So remember, Indonesia is about big population, rich natural resources, and we have to grow our way.
Thank you so much, Mas Ferro. So, right, ladies and gentlemen, I think now I would like to open the question and answer session for all the audience. So, oh yeah, right. I see the lady over there, Mimi, and then also Mbak Kitty. So, right.
Good evening, everyone. Such an honor and pleasure to be here. I have the honor to appointed as the lead MC for GIPA's for the Global Human Capital Summit last year. Thank you so much for inviting me today, and happy International Women's Day, Diva, and my fellow women's. Talking about smoking cigarette, Pak Hamdan. My direct questions related to that too. Good, but I would like to hear the insight, especially representing our Ministry of Sport, Youth, right? So please kindly allow me to address the questions. It's such a great time to hear your insight tonight. Talking about Indonesia Emas 2045, sustainability, future of for development, nations, security, and human capital development. As we now have GIPAS, which is as our amazing professional hub worldwidely as catalyst to broader networking at a global level. We have countless resources in our country, we know that. Yet, in the other hand, our human capital qualities are listed as one of our lowest resources. I think everyone agrees. We know that mostly what we see, okay, economic growth is increasing, statistic, right? All right, so more program is increasing, statistic, again. So for the last decade, I go around Indonesia and Southeast Asia, archipelagos, regional, and conduct qualitative research, and how painful it was to see that the reality in the field, like Pak Hamdan said, unfortunately, right, is not as good as the statistic number that being broadcast to us. But I would like to know, I think it's impossible to build a strong nation and develop a better country leadership if we not develop the human capital qualities, correct? It's been almost 8 decades Indonesia has declared its independence. But unfortunately, until this very day, we're still going around and on and under the same issue, which is SDM or human capital. Speaking of smoking and cigarette, but what do you think? Why not just we make law or mandates or policy? We stop the company to produce cigarette, to sell cigarette, right? Ask them to, don't you want to shift to provide healthy, nutritious food, for instance? Just an idea. Since we know how severe does impacted to our nations and generation health, as we know, smoking indeed a generational habits and diseases. Besides, it's the second highest death cause globally after heart or cardiovascular problems or strokes. And the patients who died because of this lung cancer caused by smoking are becoming younger and younger, age-staged by daily basis. But how can we become a center of excellence? We're going to have this ambition to be Indonesia Emas 2045. I would like to know your perspective and insight on that. Is there any program inside the ministry? Let's say everyone who apply to the Ministry of Youth Sport of Indonesia cannot smoke, or no smoking stuff, or no smoking everywhere. And Mas Ferro, amazing, LPDP,
Right.
and then the progress. I just would like to know your comment about leadership communication strategy as well. Thank you, Diva.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Mas Ferro and also Pak Hamdan. Maybe you may answer first. So yes.
So yeah, first and foremost, Indonesia is not a member of WHO in terms of cigarette ratification, cigarette prevention ratification. And because there are still ongoing debates about the merits of signing or joining that. However, we at the Ministry of Youth and Sport, and together with the Ministry of Education, are aggressively ameliorating these issues by promoting prevention for school children of picking up the first cigarettes. So we are actually going from school to school, working with many NGOs across the archipelago to inform the dangers of smoking. And remember, there is a trend, even in outside of the countries, that the promotion of cigarettes are happening in different levels, right? They are no longer showing the cigarettes. So we are actually following that. We are actually prohibiting any commercials that portraying people who smoke, right? But also is also important that we start from the within, from our own family. We practice the habit of telling our children that smoking is bad for you and bad for your health, and that we ensure that at least at the ministry level, we are ensuring that people don't smoke, definitely in the Ministry of Youth and Sport, but also we are also encouraging others in different ministry to start a lifestyle. Because once you start a good, healthy lifestyle, this habit of using cigarette or smoking will also be discarded. Yeah.
Thank you, Pa. So over to you, Mas Ferro.
The question about leadership communication strategy, I think the role of a leader is two. Number one is to inspire, and number two is to provide clarity. But if you want to achieve the two, you have to communicate in the simplest way possible, right? Leaders have the tendency of typically, if you become a leader, you are having a very good educational background, educated very well, and so on. So you consume a lot of information, you consume a lot of data, a lot of research, a lot of journals. And that is good and bad at the same time when it comes to leadership communication, because then you tend to put too much information in your communication. You tend to put too much statistics, too much data in your communication, assuming that you are talking to the people like you, right? But when you are a leader, you have to talk with a language that will be understood by the professor, but also understood by the people at the janitor level. Means that if you want to inspire, how can you inspire those people at the top and those people at the bottom? So you have to communicate in the simplest way possible. So my routine is always to use analogy or examples. So put it in a story and also put it in an example. So for instance, when we want to communicate to the common people about, let's say, a very complicated topic, hutang negara, all right, the country's debt, right? A lot of people is so scared about that. But if you put it this way, think about it like a cicilan motor, right? If you are a driver Gojek and you are having a cicilan motor, of course you wanna use your motorcycle to get a living, but you don't have the money, right? So what you do a cicilan motor, you do a credit to the bank, and you get the motor today, and you pay with the income you get from the ojol or from the Gojek or Grab, right? That's the analogy of a hutang luar negeri. As long as your cicilan or your monthly payment is not more than 30% of your income, you're safe. So that's basically example of how we should communicate, right? But a lot of people are communicating with the number, with the ratio, with the everything. Yes, that will be compelling to the economists, but for the common people, that might be a little bit too much and a little bit too complicated. So I think that's how I answer the questions.
Thank you so much, Mas Ferro. I think we can cater like 2 more questions. So we have I think Mbak Kitty first, right? And then you. And then what? Oh my God, I saw lots of hands. All right, so we can start with Mbak Kitty first.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm Kitty Ruth Kirana. I'm actually from Pijar Foundation. So hi, Mas Ferro. But I'm not gonna ask Mas Ferro. I already have a special one-on-one session, so I'm gonna ask Mas Hamdan here. Mas Anin previously mentioned that there are 10,000 athletes competing in the Olympics, but we can only support 30 athletes to be competing in the Olympic, while we have like one of the largest populations in the world. So that's ironic. So what I want to ask is, what can we do to improve the number of high quality athletes in Indonesia? And where do you see the bottleneck for us to develop more athletes? Would it be possible for the education system to be more inclusive towards athletes? Since athletes needs to have more time to hone their skills while
well, right now the formal education are not supporting that. So would it be possible for also informal education can be supported by the Ministry of Youth to develop more high quality athletes? Thank you, Mas Hamdan, Mbak Diva.
Thank you so much. I think, can we collect first, Pak Hamdan, for all the questions, and then we can go one go. Okay, Mbak Nadira, yes. And then I also saw, okay, the guy with the green jacket. I know you, Dimas. Okay, and then Mbak Nadira, you may go first.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. And my name is Nadira. I've just moved actually back to my old job, which is now currently Program Director of the Young Leaders for Indonesia Foundation with McKinsey & Company. So actually directly related the question with Mas Ferro and maybe also Pak Hamdan. What I would love to understand is that we've been talking a lot about technicalities and closing the gap in the youth, right? We're talking about the 10%. But what I would love to hear your opinion about, or what you would see in the future, is actually understanding how we close the gap of the mindset. So when we have people getting certification, technical skills, they're able to implement that. But when we're talking about leading towards leadership, we do want to understand how can we push them further and create that inclusivity, so that understanding, oh, saya harus kerja, tapi ternyata cita-cita saya bisa lebih dari itu. You know, having these conversations are actually the hardest parts of moving them from university to actually becoming the locomotives of their generation. So I'd love to hear your opinion, and I would also love to see if there's any other choices or things that we can do out there or collaborate with moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, GIPA, for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. So one last question maybe from Mas Dimas. Go.
Thank you, Diva, for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone. My name is Dimas Sukma Hawkins. I am Investor Relations Associate at Stella Capital. It's a VC based in Hong Kong, Chicago. My question is more directed to Pak Hamdan. I am a black belt in karate. I was a part of the Indonesian national karate team. My younger cousin is a gold medalist in the 200 and 400 meter dash for Pekan Olahraga Nasional. We are a very big sports family, and I own a football club in Liga 3 Indonesia. So my question is, what are your perspective regarding, echoing the question regarding athletes in Indonesia? What we are noticing here is the lack of infrastructure. You mentioned how people within the eastern portions of Indonesia are healthier. And I can agree, because a lot of our talent scouting for football is there. When you have top ones, you have a really good team, and they have excellent athleticism there. But on the infrastructure side, at the same time, the eastern portions of Indonesia is some of the weakest. So there is that disconnect between having great athletes in the outermost regions of Indonesia, but them not really having the equipment and the facilities to go to the next levels of being Olympians. So the issue of banyak lahan and the issue of there's a lot of open spaces for them to be healthy is not enough. They need technology, they need infrastructure. So how do you cater to that lack of development when it comes to infrastructure? What is the perspective of the Ministry of Sports regarding investment in infrastructure for the future when it comes to those outermost regions?
Right.
I think that's my question.
Thank you so much, Dimas. So yes, over to you.
It's a superb question, Mbak Giti dan Mas Dimas. Thank you for the great question. So I think the issue is how to make an Olympian, right? How to make a great athlete. There have been research about this, but I'm going to boil it down into three. First, you need to create a healthy societies first. Those who win the gold medals, they don't come from unhealthy families. They come from healthy parents. That's the first and foremost. And the second thing is that the Olympians, actually, those who are especially the gold medalists, yeah? So the Olympians are already elite, but the gold medalists, the elite of the elite of the elites. And what the studies find is that those who actually won the gold medals practiced multiple sports when they were very young. So perhaps some play basketball when they are 6 to 8 years old, and then they play football or soccer. And then once they reach the age of 15 or 16 years old, they become specialized. They focus on one sport and they do something what is being popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours. It's actually from sports. This is the idea of doing deep work. Instead of just regular practice, you're actually doing deep and intensive work with the supervision of capable coaches. So we're talking about how to create Olympians on the one hand, and on the other hand, how to create an athlete in general. The first and foremost at the bottom, if we are actually can create a pyramid out of this, the first one is whether we have a talents for it, whether we have a people who actually like the sport. Not necessarily they are the next Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, but do we have enough players who play that sport? That's the most important thing. So they can start as a playing sport for fun, right? The talents. And the second thing, something that is very, very important is actually coaching. Coaching. Do we have enough coaches to make them to untap their potential talent? The third one is infrastructure. Where do they go? Where do they practice? Do we have enough fields? Right? For example, if you go to Saudi Arabia, I spoke with the advisor to the Minister of Sport in Saudi Arabia. For women, they have 40 fields. 40 fields? My goodness. We only have 2 probably. Right? GBK and JIS. So this is just some to give you an ideas, right? But thankfully, Pak Jokowi invested heavily on infrastructures, right? And building more and more stadiums. So in fact, as we speak, the government is working hard to ensure that our stadiums are FIFA certified, right? So that's where people can actually come, practice adequately in a proper field and improve their skills. So you have talent, the first. Second, you have coaches, infrastructures. And then the fourth one is competition, right? So you have a talented Cristiano Ronaldo, but he's sitting on the bench because there's no league. You're not going to create the next Cristiano Ronaldo. So competition is very important. So when we talk about competition, the fairness, the quality, and the fifth one is whether these professionals are really interested to be the top at their profession. So they get a professional contract, where do they go from there? This going to the second part of, I think, Ibu question, right, about the mindset. Mbak Nadira, basically, there are good athletes and great athletes. The difference is in the mindset. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And over to you, Mas Ferro. Round of applause for Pak Hamdan.
Good questions about closing the gap on mindset. I think we have to switch from the mindset of relying on the help of the external influence into relying on yourself. What I mean by that is like this: if you think about the rest of the society, they are relying on a social safety net, the bansos, and then the healthcare provided by the government, and so on and so forth. So that they are, for years, they are always in the mindset of, okay, what will the government do for me? What will the government do for helping me? If we still having that mindset, we will not go anywhere, whether as a personal or as a country. So I think we have to switch that mindset to relying on yourself, and that's a very hard things to do, and the hardest things to do, because if we are successfully doing that, somebody that will rely on themselves, they will always find a way, right? They will always find a way, and the external support is just the catalyst for that. So I myself grew up in a small town, as I mentioned before, and then I live only with my mom because my dad passed away when I was 1. And then I always remember this teaching from my mom, that she always prohibited me to, if we have family members coming out of town, normally they will bring, buah tangan or oleh-oleh, right? And then I always remember my mom always tell me that never ask for oleh-oleh. If they give you, you receive, but never ask for that. Never ask for to people. Never ask to people. You have to give to people. That kind of mindset is always stuck in my head, so that everything that I do, everything that we do, we always have to rely on ourselves. But what I learned is that why that mindset is passed to me is because I also look at how my mom worked hard. She worked as a labor in one of the factory in Pekalongan, and at the outside of the working hour, she sell batik and also become a tailor, right? And that example, is real to me. So means that I think if we want to make the people switch the mindset, we have to give them as many examples as possible. Unfortunately, if we look at our social media outlet, communication outlet, and also mainstream media outlet, what we showcase is not inspiration. What we showcase is fear. So means that if we show fear, if we show something that is not positive, people will tend to be defensive. People will tend to be fearful and scared, right? But if we show something that, yes, this is the small town boy that becomes something, and we show that in the mainstream media, then it will spark understanding to people that, yeah, we can, right? I think the next administration, their job is how to basically not regulate, but more like a nudging the mainstream media and also the people to post a more inspiring and life-changing stories rather than just story that are mundane and also negative, right? So I think that's how we can do it. It's very easy to say, but it's very hard to do but luckily I have experienced firsthand. So that from my experience, at least what I can tell is we need example, and we need example in front of us. If it's not in front of us, now we can have the example here, right? So I think what we can control as a human being is basically who we follow, what we follow, and what we consume as a media content. I think that's what I can say.
Thank you so much, Mas Ferro. I think that also wraps up your statement, and also maybe Pak Hamdan, any closing statement? Maybe just very brief one.
So Indonesia 2045 will depends on healthy citizen and our citizens becoming a lifelong learner, like Pak Ferro said. But if you, as a final note, if I ask you, Mbak Tifa, if there is a pill that would reduce your chance of getting depression by 30% and increase your lifespan by up to 7 years, and also most likely prevent you by 60% of ever getting heart attack, how much are you going to pay for this pill?
Oh my God, this is very hard. So, but maybe it's very priceless, but yes.
And this pill is not being sold in pharmacy, and this pill is free. It's called physical activity. Do it every day, twice on Sunday. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for both of our speakers. So thank you so much. I think I will just hand it over to Hilmi to wrap up the whole session. But yes.
Thank you so much, Pak Ferro, Pak Hamdan, for the brilliant session. I'd invite Mufidaya with our certificates. Pak Stephen, perhaps you can hand them over to Pak Ferro and Pak Hamdan. I'd also invite colleagues from Pijar or Kemenpora, if they're here, to join us on stage for a quick picture. Perhaps Ibu Cynthia or Bu Bagiti, if you would like, just for, okay, all right. So, cameras, please. Yeah. So, just some closing logistics. Once again, we're very happy to have all of you here tonight. Of course, our guests joining us via Zoom as well from GIPA's 28 hubs with over 6,000 to 8,000 Indonesian professionals overseas. And I think just some little bit of housekeeping in the end, I'm really happy to announce that in July, Pak Ferro, Pak Hamdan, GIPA is hosting something in Paris with Pak Anin. So we're looking forward to inviting you then as well. And in August, we'll have our flagship Human Capital Summit, Pak Ferro, Pak Hamdan. This will be doubling down on Indonesian government's diaspora policy. So angles from human capital, futures thinking, from youth and sports. This is something we'd definitely love to collaborate with you, Pa, and the audience here as well. I'm sure you represent a great many organizations, civil society companies. Please do get in touch with any member of the team. We're happy, we're always open to collaborate. Once again, thank you everyone. Have a great weekend. Round of applause everyone for everyone. Okay. That's it. Wine is served outside, tea as well. There's still some satay and some snacks. Do help yourselves before. Thank you so much once again.